Welcome to NHL Imperialism, the last true off-season content we'll have before diving all the way into the 2013-14 NHL season. Now, if you've seen Imperialism videos before, like on Dean's World, for example, which I'm pretty sure is the original creator, at least as far as North American sports are concerned, where he does it with the NFL and Madden, this works pretty much like that, just for the NHL, and there's no video game involved, so a little bit of a twist there. If you're completely new, though, basically the way it works is we've got a map of the US and Canada, because this is the NHL, where each team is given the state or province that they're from. In cases where multiple teams are from the same one, then it's split up like with New York or Florida or Alberta. You get the point. We also have a wheel that has all the teams on it so that we can randomly select teams to start their conquests. And once a team is selected by that wheel, there's then an arrow that they'll spin to see which direction they're going to conquest in, which then leaves two options for expansion as each team tries to take over all of North America, or the US and Canada in this particular case. If the first territory that they come in contact with by following the direction of that arrow from the capital, which is the location of the arena for each of these teams, roughly anyway, some of them had to be a little bit different, like in New York or LA because of proximity of arenas, but from the arena, following that arrow, if the first place they come in contact with is empty, then they get to claim that for free. If, however, it's owned by another team, then those two teams will battle, and the winner gets to claim all of the territory of both of them. And then from there, that's where this version is going to get a little bit different from the other ones out there, because, well, quite honestly, I just don't have a video game, so the battles won't be fought over video game simulations to see which team would win. Instead, we have another wheel set up that will determine what the teams will be battling over. It could be anything from most Stanley Cups to weighted Stanley Cups, last head-to-head matchup, or even a couple of other fun ones thrown in there, some of which involve the title belt, which if you're not familiar with, there's a link down below that'll explain what that is. And for that matter, if any of the other types of battling need explanation, we'll cover that when we get to it. There is a long ways to go because this just keeps going until one team has conquered all of the US and Canada. So let's jump right into it. We'll start with our first spin, see which team is on the move first and attacking. We will have the Philadelphia Flyers. See where the Flyers are headed to. Spin the wheel to see the direction again from the stadium area, or again, right about where the stadium is. They're going to be headed just west of south here. So if we go to the map, we look down here, anything south is going to hit the Capitals, so we'll get Flyers Capitals right off the bat. Find out how they'll be fighting. Weighted Cups. Alright, so this one is kind of like Stanley Cups, but as we know, some cups were easier to win than others, like for example when there were only 6 teams in the league. So what I've done with weighted cups is take each cup that a team has won and give them a number of points based on the number of teams in the league when they won it, add all those up, and you have a team's total score for weighted cups. So then when it comes to our matchup of the Flyers and Capitals, while the Flyers have won twice as many cups as the Caps, 2-1, they did win them when there were about half as many teams in the league, but it's still enough for the Flyers to get the win with 34 points, while the Capitals have just 31, obviously winning against Vegas in their first year. And so just like that, we have our first team off of the board. The Flyers will take all of the land that was bestowed to DC. I did give them all of Maryland. Now I know DC is its own thing and not technically part of Maryland or Virginia for that matter, but I just went ahead and gave the Caps Maryland, which is why we have this fight, and the Flyers do end up winning it and claiming all of that area. And so with that, we head back to the wheel to see which team is on the move next. It is the Florida Panthers. All right, and I did forget that I have to take DC off of the wheel here. Now, yes, you may have noticed there for a split second before they got knocked out that I do have it as the DC Capitals instead of the Washington Capitals, but as I've said before on this channel, if you're from Washington and you've been mistaken for being from DC as much as... Anyway, you'd understand. Now on the map, I do have the Panthers basically locked in because they're below the Lightning, but I am going to allow seafaring, I guess naval attacks, if you will, as long as it's a straight shot. Unfortunately, that was going pretty much southwest, which, yeah, there's nothing southwest except for Mexico of that angle anyway for the Panthers, so we'll head back to the arrow and try again. South. All right, well, it's not Mexico, but same issue. South. All right, that one is definitely headed west enough. Yeah, it's going to be a line right into Dallas. So the Florida Panthers are taking on the Dallas Stars here. Let's see what they're battling over. Oh, percentage of years making the playoffs. So this is pretty straightforward. It's the percentage of the years they've been in the league of making the playoffs. Go over here. This is the times they made the playoffs. This is actually the Coyotes, so not particularly useful to us here, but out of 30 seasons in the league, but we'll subtract one because of 2005 or 2004 and 5. Fortunately, I've already done all this math over in a different sheet here. The Florida Panthers with 31% of the years they've been in the league making the playoffs, and then their opponent, the Dallas Stars, yes, 63.4, and that does include their time as the Minnesota North Stars. I went with full franchises here instead of splitting it up, so yeah, Dallas is going to be easily taking that win. Dallas will make their way over and claim this territory from the Panthers. This does then now line up a potential of a rematch from the 2020 Bubble Stanley Cup between the Lightning and Dallas and the Stars. But we'll have to wait and see if that happens. For now, we're headed back to the wheel with 2 teams already off the board. Got the Maple Leafs. All right, see if the Maple Leafs can hang on and not just be the 3rd team eliminated. We're getting weighted cups again, so while it's been a long time since they won the cup, they have won a few of them. Unfortunately, because it's been a long time, the ones that they won are not going to do too well when it comes to the weighting process, but we'll see who they are up against, as they are going to be headed pretty much straight southwest, which I think, oh, that could be pretty close. Now, using some very exact ways of measuring that exact angle, it does look like it's going to be the Leafs headed from, again, right around where their arena is, pretty much straight to Detroit. So we're going to get a battle of original 6 teams here pretty early on, and that is going to take out one of the favorites here early. Is the way I have this set up, it does tend to kind of lean in the favor of the original 6, which I know might annoy some people, but also shows that there isn't a ton of bias for me. Coming as a Kraken fan, obviously this is not going to probably be one that the Kraken have a great chance of winning, but you never know what could happen. And yep, sure enough, this is where weighted cups is going to kind of show its teeth a bit over just general overall cups. As well, the Maple Leafs would win overall cups with 13 to just 11 for the Red Wings. They won all of theirs either before or during the original 6. Insert since 1967 joke here. And so as a result, they have a much lower score than the Red Wings, who did win 4 of their cups where there was significantly more teams in the league. So this one is going to be going to the Red Wings, and Toronto is out early, which I'm sure will just do wonders for the watch time of this video, but we're not going to play favorites. And just like that, most of Ontario turns red and the Maple Leafs disappear. I guess all of Ontario is red because the rest of it is Ottawa red. And yes, Senators fans, I know you didn't get much of Ontario, but I went roughly based on proximity to arenas, and most of Ontario is closer to Toronto. But anyway, you'll have your chance to win that land back. And who knows, maybe that chance is right now as we head back to see which team is next. Oh, almost the Senators. It almost was the Senators' chance to get going here. And the arrow is going just slightly west, so I think that's going to put us against Detroit rather than Ottawa. So we got Sabres versus Detroit. Ottawa barely dodging a fight here twice over. And let's see what these teams will be fighting over. The battlefield, if you will. Most team goals in a season. And this is a team record, so this is the most goals for scored by the team in a single season. For Detroit, that comes in the 92-93 season with 369. Meanwhile, for Buffalo, actually they got pretty close with that 74-75 season with 354, but once again, it is going to be the Red Wings that are coming out on top of this one as they go after trying to monopolize the Great Lakes and take out another team along the border here in Buffalo. So the northeast of the continent is definitely starting to turn pretty red, even if it's a few different shades. We'll have to see which one of those shades of red potentially ends up winning out, or if one of the other teams can get there. But for now, let's head back to the wheel and see if we can't get a team from the west involved. And we got the Anaheim Ducks. So we did get to the west. Let's see where the Ducks are headed. 3 teams in California with that land split up. The Ducks, if they go north, Definitely headed north, but that could be into Nevada. We'll have to see. I feel like that's still going to end up against the Kings. That's definitely going to get some Kings territory there. So we got the battle for the greater Los Angeles area and Southern California in general. They fight over most team goals in a season again. Well, I guess we're going to continue to learn how many goals different teams are scoring. So for the Ducks, the most goals they've had for in a season would be 263 in 13-14. And for the LA Kings, it's an easy win here with the 10th best all-time season in goals for in 1988-89 with 376. So the Kings are going to be taking the rest of Southern California and sticking in the Southwest, we're going to be going to Arizona. So I guess we'll see where the Coyotes are heading. In imperialism battle, that is, not moving states. We don't know that yet. Anyway, as far as the battle is concerned, they are headed northwest-ish, and that's probably going to end up in Vegas, but maybe there's some extra land in between the two. Oh, actually, that might be going to the Kings. All right, so after some more very exact measuring, where I'm definitely not just holding up a straight edge to the screen and figuring out roughly where that angle is pointing, it turns out that from where the Coyotes arena is, then their headquarters, or their capital, if you will, in this imperialism, is going to just nick the very northern edge here of this border, which would have been Ducks land, but now belongs to the Kings. So we've got Coyotes Kings as the Coyotes just avoid a battle of the desert with Vegas, which, as we know, would have excited Gary Bettman very much, but he's probably not the only person watching this video, so we'll make sure this is for everyone and keep the integrity alive, stick with the Kings, and see how they'll be battling the Coyotes, as they'll be fighting over average rounds won per playoff appearance. So this one is not necessarily just which franchise has done best overall, considering if you just went to the playoffs once and won the Stanley Cup, well, you'd be doing pretty good there. But with the Coyotes and Kings, the Coyotes have definitely been to the playoffs fewer times, but have they gone deeper in those playoffs? My feeling is no, but we'll find out. Again, fortunately, I've done the math ahead of time here, and it turns out that the Coyotes, well, they have one of the lowest average rounds won per playoff appearance at just 0.25 rounds. So they're only winning a round every fourth time that they've gone to the playoffs as a franchise. Again, this is including the original Winnipeg Jets, at least while they were in the NHL anyway. Meanwhile, the LA Kings are winning 0.73 rounds per playoff appearance, so they're winning a round more often than not when they make the playoffs. And not only that, they are winning this battle and claiming Arizona as their own. All right, the Colorado Avalanche. They have a lot of free land around them, so they probably are going to be doing some land grabbing here, but there's always a chance they could face the Golden Knights. Nope, just east of north, I think, is definitely going to get them some free land. And actually, yeah, there was no chance they were going to face the Golden Knights. I forgot Utah was there. I guess they could have maybe just gotten that corner there to face the Kings in four corners, but it would have had to been a pretty exact angle. But that's all aside from the point, is that's obviously not what's happening here, because they're headed just east of north, which, of course, looks like headed straight for this border between Nebraska and Wyoming. Nothing can be simple. It is headed pretty east of north, so I'm gonna go ahead and give them Nebraska. And we go back to the wheel with Colorado having expanded their territory without having to fight anybody. And the Columbus Blue Jackets are up next, going just south of east, get my directions correct. And it looks like they are going to get some free land. They had a decent chance at getting free land. They're going to go over here and claim West Virginia, and we go back to the wheel. All right, we've got the New York Islanders, who, if you looked at the map, you wouldn't really be able to see their territory, as their logo is pretty much covering all of it. But as they head just north of west, I'm pretty sure that's going to be a Battle of New York. Now, the Islanders have just the island. It's going to be a little bit rough here in this area about where the capitals of these empires are, because these three teams have their arenas all within, I mean, it would be a long walk, but pretty close to each other. And they'll be fighting over average rounds won per playoff appearance. So close to head-to-head record. We'll get some new ones in here eventually. With 32 rounds won in 28 appearances to 68 rounds won in 62 appearances, that does make it a narrow win for the Islanders, just over the Rangers, as they get to take the eastern half of the state and move out of just being stuck on the island. And also just like that, we lose another one of our original 6 teams, which leaves just 4 of them left. Probably the one that I would say the favorite going in because of their overall history would be the Habs, but they haven't gotten involved yet, so we'll see what happens there. The Islanders again, so back-to-back moves by the Islanders here. They're thirsty for more land coming off of their win over the Rangers. They head just east of North there. Go ahead and get them Connecticut. Now we get the Dallas Stars. Now the Stars do have Southern Florida, but that's not going to come into play here. Again, we're going from the capitals or the arenas of the teams. Oh, we're headed straight east. And for the Stars, straight east means they get Louisiana. All right, it's the Philadelphia Flyers again. They got us started here, and they get to go again with already the 1 defeat under their belt over the Capitals. And they're headed a little bit towards the southwest here. That might be more free land for them. And sure enough, I think that's going to get them Virginia. And yes, there's the possibility that some of you eagle-eyed viewers have noticed that this is the old now Philadelphia Flyers orange and not their slightly darker version. But since they haven't actually played any games with that yet, or at least when I'm recording this anyway, we'll stick with the old, in my opinion, slightly better orange. But from orange to yellow, we've got the Nashville Predators on the move next. Let's see where they go. Again, some land around them to claim. They're going to be headed pretty much south as they lay claim to Alabama, and more of this free space starts to get taken up. We can head back to the wheel without having to delete any teams just yet. Still, most of the league definitely left here. All right, the Kings back on the move again, just slightly west of due north, which of course, once again, is going to make this a bit of a measuring task. And I think that does put them just into that corner here with San Jose. The battle for California will be fought over last season's win percentage. Well, as anybody who watched any hockey last season already knows, the Sharks were not very good in the 2022-23 campaign. Meanwhile, the Kings made the playoffs, so yeah, this is going to be another easy win for the Kings as they lay claim to the rest of California and continue to expand their empire. Which unfortunately does mean that we have to say goodbye to that beautiful teal color, and just like that, we're back to the Red Wings, as we're starting to get some clear favorites here, at least of the spinning wheel. And the Red Wings are headed once again southwest as they continue to try to find someone to battle down there. I guess just making a beeline for the Kings, but they've got a long ways to go before we get to that point. But in this case, going from the center of the logo, they're going to just end up nicking this corner here of Ohio in the very northwest of the state. Again, this arrow just picking pretty much right at the borders of these almost every time. But we're going to go Red Wings versus Blue Jackets to see which one of these teams gets to get a little bit more towards that empire in the Great Lakes region. We'll have to find out as they will be fighting over a lot of things that favor the Red Wings, and franchise win percentage I think is definitely going to be one of them. And sure enough, the Red Wings with a .517 win percentage versus just .43, well, rounded up to 8 for the Blue Jackets. It means that the Red Wings are taking this. Now, to be clear, this is just adding overtime losses to losses versus wins, and then ties, which were a thing up until 2004, don't count for anything in this. It's basically just a wash of a game. Either way, it would have made a huge difference. The Red Wings were definitely winning this one. As they continue their conquest of the Great Lakes, claiming a little bit more area there. I mean, they actually, other than a little sliver that the Penguins have, pretty much have Lake Erie locked up, so they'll have to, I guess, beat the Penguins to get that. Yeah, the Red Wings really claiming the lakes there. So with another team down, we head back to see who's up next, and we have Winnipeg Jets. We've got a newcomer to the battle here, and they are headed south, which Winnipeg's surrounded by a fair amount of open land, and sure enough, I guess that got pretty close there. If they had gone a little bit more towards the east rather than the west, they would have gotten Minnesota, but they head over towards North Dakota and will be going across the border to claim a little bit of land. So with the Jets getting their first appearance, we'll spin the wheel again and get the first appearance of the Vancouver Canucks. So we have our first appearance in the Northwest, and let's see where the Canucks are headed. They are going to have a hard time claiming new land. They're headed straight south, and that will get them a battle with your Seattle Kraken. Don't even have to look at the map for that one. Let's see what these two teams are battling over. Weighted cups. Well, that's going to be a wash because neither team has won a cup. So Highest jersey number of franchise GOAT. All right, well, I understand this one has a little bit of subjectivity to it. With the Kraken, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that McCann has definitely been that for them. Meanwhile, for the Canucks, it's take your pick of the Sedins, either 22 or 33. So we'll take McCann's higher number, which is 19. Unfortunately, either way, this does mean it's a one and done for the Kraken, and the Canucks head south and take Washington. And also, just for the sake of, keeping this a little bit more visually interesting, turn the Oilers orange rather than blue, because there's enough blue. Actually, some of the blue teams have really started to dwindle. But there's only one other orange team, so I'm going to go back to orange for the Oilers there. Not that it really matters. We're headed back to the wheel where the Oilers have yet to show up in the first place. And it appears the Oilers will continue to remain dormant. If only oil industry would do the same. Either way, we're back to the Kings and another one of Wayne Gretzky's teams. We'll see where the Kings are headed as they continue to expand, having already defeated 3 teams and claimed a lot of territory. Well, they can't head south, so we're going to spin that again. And it looks like we're headed just south of east. That might also be... I think that gets them New Mexico. So they go from trying to claim Mexico, which they can't do, to New Mexico is on the board, and it is now part of this black belt in the Southwest. After all, I guess fighting is part of hockey, so maybe the Kings are just trying to broaden their horizons in their style of fighting. And we have the Winnipeg Jets again, which I now just realized I have Winnipeg spelled incorrectly, so we'll go ahead and fix that. It's actually Winnipeg and not Winnipeg. We can see where they're headed. So they'd already claimed some land under the alias of Winnipeg, but now Winnipeg, they are headed, I think this time this is towards wild territory. That does, if nothing else, it's going to get this little nub in there, going into a little bit more of this green territory, as all 3 of the green teams still alive, but this is the first appearance for the Wild. Let's see what the Wild and Jets fight over. Another oldie but a goodie, rounds 1 per playoff appearance. Neither one of these franchises particularly known for winning playoff rounds. In fact, the Jets have only ever won 3 rounds in the playoffs, even going back to their days as the Thrashers. Meanwhile, the Wild have won 1 more in 4, but they've also played a lot more times in the playoffs, with 13 appearances to just 7 for the Jets. So I suppose, well, Wild fans could argue that their franchise has been more successful because they've made the playoffs more often. When it comes to rounds 1, once you're into the playoffs, again, 4 rounds and 13 appearances is a worse average than 3 rounds in 7 appearances. Neither one's particularly great, but in this case, for the Jets, it's enough to expand their territory and knock the Wild out in their first battle. Up next, we have the St. Louis Blues, a new team coming to join the mix. They've got plenty of land and also some chances to fight, but it looks like they're going to be headed west, a little southwest, and I'm pretty sure that gets them some free land. Does seem like, based on the angle of this arrow, and once again, my absolutely flawless ability to measure this, that they do end up hitting this little gap in the border here, or I guess between these 2 borders, and they are going to end up getting Oklahoma. Well, looks like the Blues are going to get another chance to maybe claim more land in a more decisive way, or they will head northeast and probably end up fighting. Yep, it's pretty much anything in the Northeast is going to head right into the Blackhawks. Percentage of years making the playoffs. Well, for Chicago, they've been in the league for nearly a century now and have been to the playoffs 63 times, so a pretty decent average there. And then for the Blues, well, it is a little bit better. Fortunately, they were helped out, I guess, a couple of those years by making the playoffs as just being a part of one of the expansion teams and one of the better expansion teams since the 1967 expansion. Either way, they've been around for 55 years and have made the playoffs, the vast majority of those, 44 times to the playoffs for the Blues. Obviously just the 1 Stanley Cup to show for it, but at least for Blues fans it has been more recent. Either way, this is an easy win for the Blues, and now just half of the original 6 teams remain. All right, another first-time appearance, and this time it's the Carolina Hurricanes. Thinking sure enough, right into what is now that, I guess, old orange of the Philadelphia Flyers, and the battlefield for this matchup is franchise point percentage. One that, well, it could be kind of interesting. Both teams have definitely had their ups and downs, but in the end, it turns out it's really not all that close, as the Hurricanes ultimately were undone by a handful of lean years, especially in the early days in the NHL when they were still the Hartford Whalers. Either way, they come in at just under 500, so a good season this year, which everyone kind of expects them to be. They can get over 500 as a franchise win percentage-wise. Still, it's not close to the .569, which is probably falling, of the Flyers. Either way, for now, even if it isn't that way in, say, another 5 to 10 years, this is a battle being won by the Flyers as they continue their southern march down the East Coast, trying to claim as much of it as they can, I suppose. Now getting North Carolina, and I also just realized I forgot to take the Blue Jackets off the map. I guess they were just blending in, hiding somewhere in Columbus, but they've been found out and are now gone. Nice try, though. And back to the wheel, where the Tampa Bay Lightning will make their first appearance. Now, if they head south, they could still end up against the Stars. Well, that part actually is going to head across the, that kind of south is going to go right across the Gulf of Mexico, so that's just not allowed, and we are going to spin it again. All right, there we go. That one is definitely headed toward southern Florida, which is, again, Stars country after their naval warfare with the Panthers, and we are going to get that rematch of that bubble Stanley Cup between the Lightning and Stars, but that's not what they're fighting over here. Instead of a Stanley Cup, it's something much more important. It's winning Imperialism, the first one ever, and in this case, they're battling over who was the most recent holder of the title belt. So the first appearance here by the title belt. And if you don't know what that is, I have a whole video about that. It's another thing I've adapted to the NHL. I have a whole video about that, but basically you can think of it as a mix between NHL and the way that belts are handed out in different combat sports. Whatever your favorite is, you can pick wrestling or something less scripted like MMA or boxing. And of course, it does have its full official history since the start of the NHL. All the way down here, we'll come to the most recent holder of it. So Tampa Bay's last time holding the belt looks like it was the 2nd of February of last year. I guess this year still, last season. Meanwhile, Dallas, if we go to the playoffs, Vegas claims it in the second round. And then Dallas does obviously win a couple games there in the conference finals. So Dallas is going to end up winning this after holding the belt there game 6, or I guess that was game 5, sorry, of the conference finals. Obviously, they end up losing that to Vegas, who are the current holders of the belt. Doesn't always go to the playoffs. Again, that's in that separate video about the belt. And they will claim all of Florida for themselves. So the Lightning may have won that Stanley Cup in the bubble, which nobody even counts as a real Stanley Cup, right? Besides, between the Stanley Cup and winning the first Imperialism, I think we all know what all of these fan bases would want. And the Lightning are out here in their first attempt. And the Stars really making a pretty good effort here of monopolizing the Gulf Coast of the U.S. anyway. Still have to get through the Predators to get that little bit of Alabama, and then there's Mississippi they'll have to claim, but we'll see if that ends up happening. And it will be the Calgary Flames. All right, the Flames, another team that has yet to get involved to this point. They're finally making a move for the first time. They've got a lot of Canucks and Oilers, and that's, I don't have to really look at the map, but we'll just confirm, yeah, we're headed straight towards the Canucks green territory here. And these two teams will be fighting over percentage of years making the playoffs. Of course, for the Flames, including their time in Atlanta, and again, subtracting the season that nobody played in 04-05, they've been around for 50 seasons and have made the playoffs in a respectable 31 of those. Meanwhile, for the Canucks, they have been around for not that much longer, just a few years at 53 seasons, actually 52, again, taking out the year that nobody played, and have just been to the playoffs in 28 of those. So, at least when it comes to making the playoffs, plus I suppose the Flames do have the one Stanley Cup, so even once there, this is going to be a battle won by the Flames, as they are going to lay claim to pretty much all of Western Canada, other than their friends up north in Alberta. Well, northern Alberta, you know what I mean. So we take the Canucks off the wheel as we close in on half of the teams left in the league. In fact, let's see, we have 17 teams left, so once one more team leaves, we will have the top half in this first ever round of Imperialism here, the 2023 version, and the Penguins are going to make their first appearance. They're going to risk it all in being part of that top half to try and claim a little bit of land here. It could have just stayed still and continued to hide in their western half of Pennsylvania. Instead, they're going to head straight north just about, which I don't really think I have to look at the map again, as that is going to be heading right into the Great Lakes Empire of the Red Wings. So the Red Wings will now have a chance to claim all of Lake Erie for their own, or maybe the Penguins will do that. Either way, Lake Erie's up for grabs here. And while the Red Wings have really carved out a pretty decent dynasty here, it could all come crumbling down. By percentage of years making the playoffs, we're getting this one again. As we know from earlier, or I think we had this one earlier, either way, the Red Wings have made the playoffs in 64 seasons of their near century of existence. Meanwhile, the Penguins, who, as we know, have been around since that first expansion, have been a part of the NHL for now 55 seasons, again subtracting 04-05, and have been to the playoffs in 37 of those, which is good for 67.3% of their seasons making the playoffs, and just barely edges out the almost exactly 2/3 of seasons that the Red Wings have made it, 66.7. So this one is going to be going to the Pittsburgh Penguins, just barely defeating the Red Wings empire. And that's sometimes just how it goes. A team that has worked so hard to claim so much land, just one fell swoop is going to lose all of it to the Penguins here. Penguins now have an empire of yellow, which Nashville is going to be looking at with all sorts of envy. The Red Wings, another original six team off the board, is just two remain. The Boston Bruins, who have yet to move at all, and the Montreal Canadiens, who also have yet to move at all. And so, just like that, we are down to just half the teams remaining, which includes both teams from Alberta, although the Oilers have not done anything yet. The Kings and Golden Knights as well, have just kind of sat in one place this whole time. In the Central Division, the Avs, Stars, Nashville Predators, St. Louis Blues, and Winnipeg Jets have all made some moves just on technicality on the place of the Avalanche and Predators, but they're all still there. Then over in the East, we still got a cluster of teams there up in the Northeast, including the Senators and Habs, who both haven't made any moves themselves. The Bruins in that same category. The Islanders, who have just made the two. The Devils, who also have yet to do anything. And of course, the Flyers, who have made their conquest down the East Coast. And the Penguins, who took over the Great Lakes Empire from the Red Wings. And it looks like it's going to be the St. Louis Blues. Let's see where the Blues are headed. Down to the southeast, which looks like it'll put them, yeah, it's going to just clip Kentucky right there and get the Blues a little bit more free real estate. The Calgary Flames, who also have a chance to claim some free real estate of their own, or they could end up finally getting this Battle of Alberta over with, which it looks like is exactly what they're going to end up doing. Battle of Alberta will be fought over, it's going to be overall head-to-head record. And I do think this would include the time they were in Atlanta. I'm going off the NHL records or NHL.com records page. But the Battle of Alberta, with 263 games played between the two franchises in their existence, the Flames actually come out with the better record here with a 131, 107, 19-6 record against the Oilers, with that being win, loss, tie, and overtime loss. So that overall, the Battle of Alberta, even if recent years might suggest otherwise, looks like the Flames are going to be taking this one, and they will make the Oilers one and done, which does now mean, with the Flames taking, well, the Northwest and Washington of the US and western coast of Canada, they've got a little bit of a buffer zone here between them and any other team. So anytime the Flames move or another team tries to move towards them, it will take a couple of chances for anything to come of that. I guess we'll have to see if that's going to happen right away as we head back to the wheel with the Oilers no longer on it. But they did, at least with their pacifism, make it all the way to the top half, just no farther. It'll be the Nashville Predators on the move for the second time. They also have a fair amount of free space that they can grab. Heading south, I think that's going to go through territory they already own, and yeah, I think that's going to head right through territory they already own and down to that little nubbin at the bottom of Alabama and into the Gulf of Mexico. So we're going to spin again until we get something a little bit more definitive here. There we go. That's a little bit more direct. Panthers claiming a lot of the southeast here, but they're going to eventually run into the Stars one way or the other. We've got the Boston Bruins. The Bruins making their first move of this imperialism, made it all the way to the top half without having to do literally anything. And they are headed, pretty inarguably headed to New Hampshire. So the Bruins will start their own dark empire up here in the Northeast. Just like in the opposite corner of the continent, the Kings have really taken off down there. So with no more teams out, we spin the wheel again, and it's the New York Islanders, who do not have a lot of options when it comes to ways to avoid conflict here. So we're likely to get a battle, as they will head, if they really want to go into the Atlantic Ocean. That's just not how this is going to work. Ah, there we go. North, a little bit east of North. That might set them up with a battle against the Bruins, and it sure is straight at the Bruins. They're not even going into like some sort of corner of their territory. They're going right for the capital here. Number of times with the title belt, as we talked about the title belt, which, as we've mentioned, the NHL title belt here is something that we've established and goes all the way back to the start of, well, the NHL, which does mean the Bruins have a bit of an advantage with that entire original 6 era. And sure enough, the Bruins have held the title belt for the second most games of any franchise, 724 games that they've had the belt, second only to the Montreal Canadiens. And while the Islanders have done pretty respectably, they're third most among teams that were not a part of the original 6. Yeah, the original 6 have a pretty decent lead because of that time on everyone else, and the Islanders are going to end up losing this conquest to the Northeast. I did decide if there's any territory, in this case Rhode Island, that has become pretty much completely surrounded to the point where no other team can get to it, then that team can lay claim to it, so the Bruins can go ahead and take Rhode Island there for free. And so just after the Bruins get involved for the first couple of times, we'll have our first sighting of the Ottawa Senators, who just barely avoided a clash with the Sabres a long time ago now. But they are getting their first chance. They're caught between the Penguins Empire and what is still a good amount of land for the Habs, who have yet to show up as well. And that is definitely headed towards the Habs, as both the Senators and Canadiens will get their first opportunity to join in the festivities here. Again, the Habs are definitely a favorite going into this, so maybe an uphill battle here for the Senators, but there's a couple here in this wheel that they might be able to win. Gonna have to say, weighted cups is not one of them, because while, again, the Habs have won a lot of their cups with fewer teams in the league, the Senators in their current form and current franchise have yet to win any cups, so one would have been enough for the Habs. They have 24, and they will claim the Senators' portion of Ontario. Well, at least once again for the Senators, they did make it pretty far through just sitting around and waiting. And I think that means that as we look back at the map, we only have one team left that has yet... Oh, no, we got 2 teams still that have yet to make moves. The Vegas Golden Knights still sitting there in Nevada without having to do anything. And somehow in the brutal cluster of the Northeast, the Devils have just sat around in New Jersey without having to do anything themselves. Obviously, they got to show up here at some point, but the Dallas Stars are not likely to find either one of them. They are headed towards Nevada, so I don't think they get there right away, but no, they'll definitely have to go through what is Kings territory, and that is unmistakably headed right into New Mexico, as the Stars and Kings battle over most recent Cup win. And that is definitely going to go to the Kings. The Stars with just the 1 cup victory, which came back in 1999. Meanwhile, with the Kings, they have won a couple, and both of those more recently in 2012 and 2014. So the Kings twice over winning this battle with the most recent cup, which means the Kings now are basically just going straight across the south of the U.S. after working their way up through California. They'll be claiming all of Texas, Louisiana, and then also will get Florida to themselves as well. And unfortunately for those of us like myself who like green, that does mean that the last of our green franchises here on the map are gone. So with 12 teams left, we'll have the Boston Bruins up next. The Bruins suddenly getting involved a little bit more, but with fewer teams left, that makes some sense. Again, we still have those 2 teams yet to do anything, but the Bruins are headed still towards the northeast. When they move, northwest. When they move, they like heading, well, pretty much straight northwest. And with New Hampshire already claimed, they're gonna get Vermont here. Oh, the Senators hung on there for a little bit too long. They and the Habs. So the last 2 original 6 teams now have a bit of a border built up with each other, but that's not happening just yet. We'll have to spin the wheel and see where we're going next. This time it's the Nashville Predators on the move. to the northwest. Either way, it's heading into Blues territory. So Predators Blues are battling not over Ryan O'Reilly, but instead over percentage of years making the playoffs. Which again, as we know from previous experience, the Blues have been very good at getting into the playoffs, making it 44 of 55 seasons. The Predators actually have been pretty good in their own right, making it 15 of 24 years. But, well, that is pretty good, 62.5%. It's nowhere near that 80% of the Blues, so the Blues will be turning all of that yellow empire, or it's not that much of it, they hadn't made too many moves. Yeah, Blues, well, one of their two shades of blue anyway, the lighter one, because, I don't know, I guess I like that one better. Either way, the Blues are taking a good chunk there of the Southeast. Up next, it's the New Jersey Devils. So the Devils on the move, and that will leave just one team that has yet to get involved in this game. The Vegas Golden Knights will be the longest lasting team without having to battle or claim any new territory. New Jersey Devils, though, are headed straight for that eastern coast territory of the Flyers, it appears. Yeah, that's going to go straight into Flyers territory for sure. They got pretty close there to maybe skirting the edge and getting into Delaware, but they're definitely going to get the battle here with the Flyers, and once this happens, that will surround Delaware, and whoever wins this is going to take Delaware with them. As these two teams will fight over last season's point percentage, which I suppose if we had done this in 2022 would have gone the way of the Flyers, but the Devils, like the Kraken, were two of the Devils more so actually even than the Kraken, were one of the most improved teams in the entire NHL and one of the best teams in the East last year. Meanwhile, the Flyers, it's been a rough go for Philadelphia hockey fans. Clearly going to be a win for the Devils. So while the Flyers had a pretty good run, the Devils are going to not only take Delaware, but all of the Flyers' empire, which also includes this part of Virginia that I'd forgotten to fill in earlier. And it's kind of a, nope, we don't need to turn the ocean red. And so the Flyers, just like the Red Wings before them, created a pretty decent empire before having it all snatched away from them by a team that hadn't done anything to that point. But that's how this works. Sometimes you just sit around and claim a giant chunk of land all at once, which then does leave us with our final 10 teams. Obviously, we've got the Habs and Bruins, the last two of the original 6. The still Pennsylvania split down the middle between what is now the Devils Empire and the Penguins, the two teams that claimed large chunks of land in one fell swoop. Then we've got the Blues, who have a hodgepodge of land over here. Jets, who I guess did win one fight against the Minnesota Wild. The Avalanche, who have yet to fight anybody. The Kings, who are just trying to claim the entire southern U.S. And then the Flames, who still have a good buffer zone there between them and anybody that tries to fight them. Kind of like a trench, if you will, between them as a little safe zone. Maybe this will be the Golden Knights' turn. No, it's going to be the Blues. Still a lot of land around the Blues, and I think that is going to be a land grab from the Blues headed northwest. Yeah, they're going to head straight into Iowa there. Eventually, we have to run out of land. Here's the Colorado Avalanche. All right. The Avalanche also actually really don't have that many options of places to go to fight anyone, so they're probably grabbing land as well. But we'll wait and see. They might have a chance to fight someone here, but they're going to head straight north, and I'm pretty sure that puts them in Wyoming. Yep, that definitely puts them in Wyoming. So the Avalanche claim the other rectangular state, and we move on. Oh, hey, we finally did it. The Vegas Golden Knights. They will have their first chance to do something in this game, which has gone, I suppose, kind of one of two ways. They could go either the way of the Penguins and Devils, claiming a large chunk of land, probably from the Kings in that case, in their first attempt, or they could be one and done like a number of teams were, but they're going straight at the Kings. They want that empire that the Kings have set up all for their own after sitting around, waiting for the Kings to build up all that land just to try and go claim it. Let's see what these two teams are fighting over. It is going to be weighted cups, which although the Golden Knights are one of just a couple of teams, actually two teams, them and the Avalanche, that have a cup weighted 32, it's not going to be enough to overcome the 2 cup wins for the Kings. So the Kings will be claiming Nevada here, as their 2 cup victories both came in a league of 30 teams, meaning they get a weighted score of 60. and just 32 then for the Golden Knights, with having won the most recent Stanley Cup. Which does mean that I'm now sat here kind of hoping that either the Kings or Bruins get knocked out at some point, because if not, then it's going to be really hard to tell which Black Empire is which. I suppose at that point I could just turn the Bruins brown, or I suppose the Kings gray. Anyway, hopefully we don't get there. It's going to be the St. Louis Blues. The Blues are also, once again, a team with some land around them, but they could end up fighting the Avalanche, so maybe we'll get the first battle for the Avalanche. I think they're the only team that hasn't battled anybody yet. Let's go and see where this arrow has the Blues going. That is going to be maybe into King's Empire. We'll see. That could be either land. I think that's going to actually end up being land. The Blues, once again, expanding their empire, so trying to look like they've conquered a lot without doing a ton. Well, will it be Penguins or Kings? It's Kings. So the Kings are going to put their southwestern landmass on the line here, as they might be the first team to face the Avalanche. They certainly have a chance to. Instead, the Kings just miss getting Alaska, so they'll have to respin. It's close, though. They almost got some of those islands hanging out there. They will respin and still head north as they head straight through Nevada here that they just took from the Golden Knights, and will claim the land of the potatoes in Idaho. Meanwhile, the much smaller but still significant Dark Empire in the East Coast is going to get a chance with the Boston Bruins here. And again, pretty much anything north here for the Bruins means the Habs, but they're going to avoid the Habs and go south instead, still into the Pacific Ocean. Either way, let's get a definitive spin here. That is much more definitive, and I'm pretty sure that is the part of north that they could go to indeed claim Maine. As the land grabbing continues, it's the Winnipeg Jets, who definitely have a lot of free land around them that they can claim. They could take a good chunk of that buffer out from the Flames. Instead, they're going to head the other direction and go southeast. Blues-controlled Iowa, and we're going to get a battle between, well, two of the three remaining Central Division teams. And these two will also be fighting over most recent cup, which is not a hard one to figure out. The Blues won a cup pretty recently, but it hardly matters because the Jets have yet to do so. Jets blue is going to be giving way to the Blues blue. And we once again land on the Colorado Avalanche, who have a chance to have their first battle of this entire thing. The only team yet to battle anybody. That is either, that could be more free space for them, but it looks like, well, it is close. The Avalanche just barely avoid the little corner there of South Dakota that creeps down into that kind of Nebraska, Iowa area, but they're going right into Iowa just past that little corner of South Dakota. And we are going to get a battle of the two remaining Central Division teams to see which team is the last among them to stand. Fought over percentage of years making the playoffs, which, as we know, the Blues are pretty dominant in. I don't think the Avalanche, especially considering they also have their years as the Quebec Nordiques to deal with, are going to be able to overcome what the Blues have in that particular battlefield. And yep, sure enough, with still a respectable 28 out of 44 years, again, including the years as the Nordiques, the Avalanche are not going to get to that 80% rate in the playoffs of the St. Louis Blues. And the Avalanche, while they did make a valiant effort just kind of hanging around there in Colorado, and when they do finally come into a fight with the Blues, they take on the Blues in probably the hardest battle that they could have, and obviously do not end up winning it, which now I guess does also surround Kansas, so they can claim Kansas as their own. And so another one bites the dust, and we're down to just 7 teams left. One more leaves, and we'll have, I guess, the new original 6 or the final 6. I guess we could go kind of final 6 into a hodgepodge of like March Madness and hockey history here. Yeah, we're almost certainly getting some land grabbing because it's the Calgary Flames who are likely going to be taking a chunk out of their buffer here. They could still, head north and right into Alaska. So someone had to go north eventually. Going to spend some time here clicking on islands. Well, taking free large chunks of land was so much fun for the Flames. I guess they're decided to do it again. If they head north, and they're going right back into the north. This time, I believe that's going to clip either the Yukon or the Northwest Territories, probably the Yukon. Actually, no, I think that definitely is Northwest Territories. So, well, actually, by getting the Northwest Territories, they also are going to end up getting the Yukon. So, and I suppose I could have left those areas out, but it seemed like more fun this way. They're there for a reason. There's people that live there. And either way, the Flames are claiming territory up north as their landmass is certainly expanding. where the Pittsburgh Penguins certainly have a little bit less as far as free real estate surrounding them. And that likely means that we're going to get a battle, and that looks like we're headed for a battle between the Habs and Pittsburgh Penguins. So we go to the map here. Actually, does that go with the Bruins? That's going kind of right towards whatever river that is that goes into Lake Ontario, just barely more towards the Bruins than the Habs. So we're getting Penguins-Bruins here as a battle, and whoever claims this one is pretty much going to hem in the Habs to fight whoever this is. I mean, so far, the most storied franchise in the history of hockey has yet to actually be spun on the wheel. The only time that they've interacted with anybody was when the Senators tried to attack them and they beat them. Either way, they are going to get surrounded by one of these two teams, and it's going to be the winner of percentage of years making the playoffs between the Bruins and Penguins. For the Bruins, it's a pretty impressive 76 appearances in 98 seasons in the league. Again, we're, as always, subtracting the 04-05 season. And then for the Pittsburgh Penguins, it's 37 appearances in 55 seasons in the league, which, while it is just over 2/3 of the time, is still 10% short of the 77.6% of times making the playoffs for the Boston Bruins. And we get closer and closer to this fight between similarly colored teams, at least as far as the primary color is concerned, between the Bruins and Kings, and having to switch one of these two teams to, again, either probably brown for the Bruins or gray for the Kings. But we'll cross that bridge when and if we get to it. For now, the Penguins, after claiming their land pretty much entirely from the Red Wings, are now going to have all of that land and this empire of the Great Lakes region taken away from them in one fell swoop by the Bruins. And so there you have it, your final 6 teams in this NHL battle: the LA Kings, the New Jersey Devils, the St. Louis Blues, the Montreal Canadiens and Boston Bruins, who are part of the actual original 6, and the Calgary Flames, who still sit up there with their buffer and tons of land up in the Northwest. But only one can reign supreme, and the Devils are going to try to do their part to be that team. They're going south. That's either into Kings territory. No, there's also the Blues down there with the Southeast, but that's actually just going to be going into, just a land grab there from the Devils, who now have no option but to fight somebody the next time that they are spun. And, well, there's a 1 in 6 chance that that's right now. And it almost happens, but it's the St. Louis Blues, as the Blues will take their wall down the middle of the continent and go south? That might be Mississippi. They might actually have a land grab here. Nope, instead I think that's heading pretty much right into Louisiana. It's pretty close to Mississippi, but the arrow is just slightly west of south. We're going to have a Blues-Kings battle here, and if the Kings do win this, I'm probably going to have to change them to gray. Total Stanley Cups, which means the Kings, with their 2 and 3 years there in 12 and 14, will beat the Blues, who have just the 1. That means that we are going to have to figure out which one of these two teams are going to have to change colors. I mean, honestly, they should go back to these colors anyway. We're going to turn the Kings... Oh, that is too bright of purple. We're going to turn the Kings purple, but a more reasonable shade of purple here. So the Kings Purple Empire has now been claimed, and they also are going to claim all of this Blues Empire as well. And the Kings really have locked down a lot of land here, as they'll also get Mississippi by surrounding that, as well as Utah by surrounding it. And the Blues, after honestly a pretty impressive run from the Blues, just missed being part of the Final 5. So with 5 teams left, we keep on going. And the LA Kings, who have kind of taken a couple of land masses now by having other teams attack them, are going to be on the move, try and claim some more land themselves. It's looking good for the Kings at this point. They've got a lot of land, but it can all disappear at once. They are headed straight to the northeast. They're not making any pit stops along the way. I guess they might be making one pit stop here. They were headed straight towards these last 3 teams. This angle of the arrow actually does end up going more into kind of the southern part of Wisconsin here, so that's going to be more purple. And I'm definitely getting glad now that I changed the Kings from the black to the purple, because, well, it would get kind of confusing up here by the Great Lakes. And for the first time, it took quite a while to get here, but for the first time, the Montreal Canadiens are on the move. Now, they can claim free land up north, or they could go fight the Bruins, and yeah, they're not going to waste any time. It's going to be a battle to see which of the original 6 teams can be the final of those left. Well, as any fan of hockey in Canada would know, no Canadian team has won the Stanley Cup since 1993. That was the Montreal Canadiens, but the Bruins have won it since then, in 2011 being their most recent. So the Bruins are going to be taking that territory and in the process becoming the final team left in the Atlantic Division, and obviously of those original 6, which based on a lot of these categories does tend to have a bit of an advantage. We'll see if that ends up playing out. Obviously it hasn't in every case. We've got 2 teams in the East here with the Bruins from the Atlantic and the Devils from the Metropolitan, and 2 teams from the Pacific Division left, with the Flames still have a decent buffer. I don't think there's really any way still for the Kings to get that straight, so the Flames actually in a pretty good spot as they've got almost an extra lifeline there. Meanwhile, the rest of these teams do not have many chances to fight anyone other than each other. But we'll see. Maybe the Kings will try and take a chunk out of that moat set up there by the Flames. Yeah, I think that's going to just barely hit the southwestern tip of Oregon here. So the Kings continue to claim more land, and now some of that buffer is gone. The Kings can definitely get to Flames territory. Who knows, maybe the Flames will decide to go after the Kings here and get what is currently the biggest landmass in the game. But the Boston Bruins are going to have their chance to go at somebody first here. Maybe they'll be the Bruins going after Kings territory. It's pretty much up for grabs to anybody, but instead they are heading northeast, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be New Brunswick. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, they probably should have had that already. In fact, nobody other than the Bruins can get to Newfoundland here, so they could just claim that. All right, that should save us some time here if the Bruins continue to try to stall by doing that, but we'll spin again. All right, the Bruins are going to get another try here. A lot less options here. They're probably going to have to fight someone that's... See what I'm talking about? They're just trying to go northeast. Okay, just trying to go northeast. It's not allowed anymore. I mean, all that... See, they would have claimed all of it anyway. But that is definitely headed more into the continent and more at part of Pennsylvania here that's owned by the Devils before it gets to Bruins, Pennsylvania. So the Bruins are going to go after the Devils to try to be the last team left in the East. Most wins in a season. And considering the Bruins just set the record for the most wins in a season with 65 in the 22-23 campaign, even if they got ousted in the first round, the playoffs don't matter here. This is the most wins in a single season. And yeah, nobody has done that more than the Bruins of this last season. So the Bruins are going to take the entire East Coast. They are the last team remaining in the East. So for the Devils, it was a good run, but it's Bruins, Kings, and Flames are the 3 remaining. And the Flames haven't had to do a whole lot. They did beat the Canucks and the Oilers, so a couple of victories under their belt. But so far, the team that has done the most in this has pretty much inarguably been the LA Kings. No, actually, now that I think about it, I forgot to fill in Florida actually belongs to the Kings too. So this is... I forgot to turn Florida purple. See, this is what happens when I allow teams to have this extra land. I don't want to leave any states or provinces out just in case somebody's from there. You know, you don't want to leave people out, but we do now run into the situation where Hawaii, although it's like up here in the map, it is more in this direction, and I'm going to be pretty loose with it, but yeah, the Kings are taking Hawaii for sure with that role. For the Bruins can pretty much only end up facing the Kings here, or I guess getting Indiana. But they can go northwest. I'm pretty sure that ends up hitting Nunavut. And sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Is what it is. These islands are actually part of that territory, so there's a lot of islands we're going to be filling in here. So just bear with me for a second while we fill in a lot of islands for the Bruins here. All right, as my effort to be thorough has come back to bite me here a little bit in these last couple rounds. That's all right. The Bruins have claimed what is left of northern Canada that was open territory, and we are very much down to just 4 extra areas of open territory that someone could claim without a battle. And the Bruins are going to be on the move again. They can go that kind of south, though. It's going to put them going right down the East Coast and it's a Bruins-Kings battle to see which one of them will fight the Flames for the title. It's going to be a fight here, a battle over franchise win percentage. And that means that I essentially wasted all my time by turning all of that land purple, because it's all going right back to black, because the Bruins have a significantly better franchise win percentage at 5-6-0, or they've won 56% of their games as a franchise. Meanwhile, the Kings are at a .472 with definitely some lean years, even though they've been mostly pretty good here over the last couple of decades, or at least not terrible for the most part. Still, it's definitely going to be a round one for the Bruins as they take the entire Kings territory. They definitely take Indiana with them. But either way, it hardly matters who ends up getting these territories here. Tell you what, we'll do a roll to find out who's going to claim that territory. All right, so the Flames, we'll say the Flames get this extra territory just for the sake of, I don't know, completionism, whatever you want to call it. The Flames get those extra territories. Now it's all down to a battle between the Flames and Bruins, and that battle is going to be fought over most team goals in a season, which is actually something that the Flames would have a pretty good advantage on just about every team in the NHL on, considering they have the 7th most goals scored in a single season by a team with 397 in the 1987-88 season. However, there are, again, 6 teams that have scored more than that Flames team did. 5 of them are the Oilers. The Oilers are the only team, all of them Wayne Gretzky-led teams, to score over 400 goals in a season. But the one team between those 5 Oilers teams and the 87-88 Flames with 399 goals in 70-71 is the Boston Bruins. So the Bruins, by 2 goals in that 70-71 season over the 87-88 season of the Flames, do end up taking this victory, and with it, they win, taking the entire map. Everything up there in Alaska is also, all this stuff. Nope, not the ocean. The Bruins don't get the ocean. Took them a long time. They were one of the last 3 or 4 teams to even move at all on the map. They eventually did. Slowly ended up conquering it all. As far as the wheel is concerned, there are a few of these that didn't end up getting spun that I'm kind of disappointed about. We did see the highest jersey number of franchise GOAT once. That's how the Kraken ended up getting knocked out, because Jared McCann couldn't pick a number higher than 19. We had last head-to-head matchup. That one's pretty straightforward. Didn't get to see that one, though. This is one that was kind of a fun one, another goofy one I threw in here, which is which team's nickname would win in a fight. So in the case of, say, the Kraken versus the Canucks, for example, yeah, Kraken is definitely going to beat the crap out of a Canuck, but didn't get to see that one. Maybe in a future version. Definitely have some options with it being set up this way. We definitely have some options of some even bigger versions of this style thing. And so with that disappointing outcome, unless obviously you're a Bruins fan, that will conclude this first NHL Imperialism, at least on this channel anyway. So let me know what you thought down in the comment section. If you thought this was fun and you'd like to see more of it, I kind of thought we might do this every off season, and also had some ideas of more expanded versions, maybe with some other old NHL teams or even teams from other leagues. Anyway, like I said, let me know down in the comment section what you thought, if you'd like to see those ideas come to life. Or also, I'd love to know if there's any other ways that teams could battle that you could think of that you'd like to see in future versions. There's also the whole power-up situation that Dean's World likes to do that we might add in future videos as well. But again, your input is going to be key on this one. I really want this to be kind of a community thing going forward and see what we can do from there. I also thought about the idea of doing this as a live stream, like live streaming the whole thing, and then we could cut it up and put it as a video later. Also, anyway, all sorts of ideas. Your input is definitely going to be vital to that, but if you have made it to this point, it has been a long one, so I appreciate you sticking here till the end. So with all that said, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that help support the channel. There's also a Patreon where, heck, that might be where the streams happen. Hard to say for sure, but especially if you're into the R&Rs that it's going to be most of the videos here for the next few months, that is going to be a good place for that. And until next time, stay safe out there. Be good to each other. God bless, and go Kraken.